George Zimmerman was having a bond hearing today. It was supposed to be nice and simple. They're asking to get a $150,000 bond so he could be out in bail. But then all of a sudden, a mini trial broke out. We're going to talk about why that might have happened in a second. There was a lot of dramatic events. First of all, Zimmerman and his dad showed up in bulletproof vests, which is very strange indeed. Let's get ABC News to set up at least what happened in the beginning here.
George Zimmerman once again tried to win his freedom at a bond hearing this morning in Florida. The last time Zimmerman asked for bond, he and his wife allegedly misled the judge about how much money they had, apparently talking in code to hide the fact they had $135,000 in donated cash. Today, their attorney insisted there was no plan to deceive the court, that the Zimmermans' actions were motivated by fear.
I asked for some consideration that it is not the grand conspiracy that the state seems to suggest.
I love that defense. This guy's too stupid to pull off a grand conspiracy. He was just trying to hide the money. Yeah, I know. That's why his wife lied, and that's why she was arrested. Not very good defense, if you ask me. But then they actually went to the heart of the matter about the actual events of that night. And Zimmerman's father was testifying, and I think he was caught here. I mean, the beginning part is interesting, but the very last question is really good by the prosecution. Watch.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
Were you able to identify whose voice it was screaming for help?
Yes, sir.
And whose was it?
It was absolutely George's.
Well, you hadn't heard your son screaming, if that is your son screaming, you hadn't heard him screaming before, right?
Oh, many times.
In that manner like that?
Similar to that.
All right. Okay, I don't know what happened to the tape there at the end, but his really good point was, he said, wait a minute now, how could you hear him screaming if, you know, the defense is claiming, and as we've seen on tapes before, Zimmerman claimed that Trayvon Martin had covered up his mouth and his nose. So which one is it? Did he cover up the mouth and the nose, or was he screaming? And I thought the first question was good, too. You really heard your son screaming just like that recently? Jesus, what's happening to your son? So it's a little fishy, to say the least. All right, we're going to bring on a legal expert here to break this down. Linda Kenny Bodden is a former criminal prosecutor. She also represented music producer Phil Spector and Casey Anthony, so she obviously knows what she's doing. Live on Skype in Massachusetts. She joins us now. All right, Linda, thanks for joining us. First question is, what happened here? Why at a bond hearing all of a sudden his dad is testifying about what happened that night, et cetera? How did a mini trial break out here?
Well, it broke out for two reasons. One, this was a massive public relations attempt by the defense, and it kind of did the same thing your tape just did, fizzle, to try to get the Zimmerman story out, that how he was attacked, and how he was hurt, and how he was bashed, and how he was bleeding. And instead, it didn't work. And the reason why the defense did it is because the judge in his previous revocation of bail had a little sentence about how the state had a good case. So the defense here decided, well, let me show you, Judge, how the state didn't have a good case. Wrong. It was a massive disaster.
Yeah, it apparently was. I want to give you one more section here about how they basically are talking. I think it's talking about what you're saying, which is they wanted Zimmerman to testify without being challenged on it. Here's what happened.
Then I would submit him, once he makes his statement, to any questions you may have on him. I am very concerned at this stage in allowing him to be open to cross-examination when the real issue is what he did to you.
First of all, it's not what he did to me. It has nothing to do with me whatsoever. It's the court. He can't pick and choose what he wants to say, how he wants to put on his case with respect to not being subject to cross-examination.
So two things there, Linda. One, they said, oh, will you let him testify without cross-examination? The judge said, no, of course not. I'm not going to let you do that. And then the second part was about lying to the court in moving around the money. So let's take those one at a time. I thought that was really weird. Is a defendant ever allowed to testify without cross-examination?
Only when you're doing something called an allocution, which is when you're trying to explain why you are guilty, but why you shouldn't be sentenced so hard. It just doesn't happen. And here the judge really got his sneakers this time. This judge really said, hey, wait a second. You know, I kind of heard, like, I let you out on bail once before. Now I'm not going to let you misuse the system again by trying to sneak one past me and not getting cross-examined by the prosecutor. So it was a nice try, again, a failure.
Right, and then second of all, about the whole misdirection on the wife and the secret code words that they used and how dumb that was. I guess the defense argument was, look at these guys, they're too dumb to be able to pull off a conspiracy. But is that a legitimate argument when obviously they were trying to hide the money?
No, especially since, you know, they wrote checks for $9,999 trying to get under the federal reporting requirements so no one could find out where the money was going, you know. And then to add that, Cenk, I don't know if you saw it, but the attorney then added to that and said, and by the way, Judge, you know, Trayvon Martin caused his own death, you know, on top of, you know, my client really wasn't trying to hide the money. So it was totally, I just don't know what they were doing except maybe getting a jury that's not going to be so, shall we say, buying the story.
Yeah, you know, they'd been doing a pretty decent job, it appeared, from the outside so far, but they really seem to have bungled it today. And then there's the essence of the case. And I want to show the audience here the tape that we showed them before about how Zimmerman was recounting that day and what happened and his head exploding, etc. So let's watch that first.
Wouldn't you agree that
No, not that one, guys. B9.
Two separate accounts and then transferring after back was a way to...
Yeah, go to B9. B9, go ahead.
His nose, on my nose, and his other hand on my mouth. He said, "Shut up." When he was hitting my head against it, felt like my head was going to explode.
So, was there a problem there, not only with what Zimmerman's dad said about, oh, I know he was screaming, but other aspects of it that you noticed too, Linda?
Yeah, and let me tell you, no one's noticed this, Cenk, and I know you have it, okay? When Zimmerman first was arrested and he went to jail, the first thing he ordered in his jail cell was contact lens solution. No one has said, hey, Zimmerman, and Zimmerman hasn't said, my contacts were knocked out, I lost my contacts, they were pushed into my eye. You know why? Because in my opinion, he really wasn't being beaten to the inch of his life, which he wanted you to believe today through the testimony of his dad and through his attorney.
Yeah, I mean, all of his accounting and that we saw there in the video, or recounting, I should say, sorry, about that scene, was so to his advantage, so obviously coached, as we had an investigator on the show saying. And then the problem is they've overcoached him. I was both screaming and I had my mouth covered at the same time. I've got all my defenses lined up, but unfortunately they don't match. So, you know, we'll see what a jury decides. It's a tough case either way, but they didn't help themselves today. Linda, thank you so much for breaking it down for us. We really appreciate it.